Hello everyone, Floppy Waffle 69 here, and welcome back to the channel, guys. Today we are going to be looking at and featuring the Tier 9 German super cruiser, battle cruiser, whatever you want to really classify it as, the Agir. The reason I'm featuring this ship is for multiple of reasons. One reason is that I know everyone is getting rewarded probably with a lot of coal this Christmas season, so I want to make sure that I feature some ships that you guys could theoretically be spending resources on. And one ship that I do highly recommend is indeed the Agir here at Tier 9. Now, I understand that this ship has a bit of a reputation of being kind of inconsistent at times, and I totally understand that, and they're not necessarily far off. I know originally when this ship was introduced into the game, or at least still in testing, the ship's secondaries were absolutely bonkers. Kind of set the precedence for ships like the Montwaffle at Tier 9 now that we see, and the Admiral Schroeder. This ship was along the lines very similar to those two ships, but of course in typical wargaming fashion they neutered that, and instead they decided to invest more on the guns of the Agir. And again, on a side note, building the ship for secondaries isn't really worth it, at least in my opinion, just because those two ships and other ships exist at Tier 9, and you're going to be fighting a lot of secondary battleships as of late. So realistically, brawling in this thing is very picky depending on the situation and or time of the game. But anyways, focusing more on the Agir for what this ship brings and what it is. Basically what this ship is, guys, is a heavier German cruiser that really slaps and wants to utilize its armor piercing. It is theoretically tankier at times. It feels like this ship can shrug off a lot of enemy shells, especially those of the 380mm variant and lower. But at the same time, this ship does have very large sections that are overmatchable. So at times the ship feels like Swiss cheese or a sieve because of the amount of AP shells coming from large caliber guns. More or less looking at 406mm guns and higher really do just carve this thing up. And I'll go ahead and showcase the armor model here in just a bit. But again, for the price that this thing is costing you in the armory, I believe it's what, 180,000 coal now. Yeah, 180,000 coal, I believe. I'll flash it up here on the screen. For that price alone, and being a Tier 9 premium ship, this ship is worth it because you're going to get that Tier 9 premium income. Not to mention, this ship is an excellent crew trainer for the Panzerschiff line. So if you're looking for a crew trainer for those commanders, look no further than the Agir. Another thing that I like to highlight about the Agir is indeed that this ship does, like I've mentioned previously, it does get a bad reputation because of its armor scheme. Its guns feel inconsistent at times, and it is a larger ship. But again, I do believe people are building this ship wrong, and I believe people think and they see older videos from older CCs and content creators about how the secondaries are cracked and what they can do, and they're still trying to bring that into the meta here in 2025, going into 2026, and that's really not the case anymore, guys. This ship's playstyle has been altered and had to have been altered due to the meta and the way it's gone. So if you're willing to have an open mind and understand that this ship has aged and it had to be altered in the way you play it, then you're going to find more success in this ship. On the side note, going back to how you can obtain this ship, another way is by the doubloons. I want you to imagine that the doubloon price doesn't exist and you can't buy this ship for doubloons, because in my opinion, there really is no reason to be spending 18,000 doubloons, or even with the 25% off coupon to bring that down to what, 12 or 13 or something like that in that range. 1,000 doubloons, it's not really worth it. You can literally get the ship for free just by playing the game for 180,000 coal, which 100% is worth it in that price alone. Another ship compared to, a lot of people I see are saying, well, what about the Palmer? And the Palmer exists. In my opinion, as a cruiser man, again, maybe I'm a little bit biased towards cruisers, and that's just me, guys, okay? And I have an old video about the Pommern that I've done, one of my first videos that I've done. Maybe I'll link that here in the description too, if you want to go check it out, how long we've come on this channel in just a year. I do recommend the Agir over the Pommern. I think the Agir is a little bit more applicable, and nowadays, in now games and in the meta nowadays, it is going to be a little harder to play in the regard of being cruisers compared to other cruisers, but it's going to be a lot easier to play than that compared to the Pommern, for an example. Okay. Um, the Agir really does have the same weaknesses of other super cruisers and battle cruisers that we have featured on this channel. More recently, we featured the Stalingrad in our last video, which I believe was like 5 or 6 days ago. It's going to suffer a lot of the same weaknesses, right? The maneuverability is a little bit sluggish. It is a larger target, a higher concealment value, and again, it burns for 60 seconds, which again is a massive weakness towards these battle cruisers. So your positioning is going to be crucial. You can't just sail in there and expect to get good results and absolutely shit on enemy cruisers. Those days are long gone. You're going to need to start off a little bit more passive, a little bit more conservative, so to speak, and then work your way up once enemy ships get eliminated to support your allies where you need to support them. In my opinion, these battle cruisers, these super cruisers, are by all means they're going to fulfill that role of supporting your supporting your allied destroyers still. That's again one of your main tasks. But I think they almost do a better job of supporting your enemy, or sorry, I keep saying enemy, supporting your allied cruisers that are trying to support your allied destroyers more so than just support your allied destroyers upright. I think that's what these ships do a really good job of. And they can do that by either shooting enemy destroyers, of course, or shooting the enemy cruisers that are trying to sink your allied destroyers, and or fending off against enemy battleships too. They can do that. Again, the battleships one, you're going to have to be a little bit more careful and pick your spots depending on which battleship you're fighting and your angling. But again, that's kind of where I see the Agir excelling at. And a lot of these battle cruisers too are super cruisers, okay? So anyways, without wasting too much time here talking and blabbering on here in port, let's go ahead and talk about this ship, and then I'll go ahead and go right into the gameplay sooner rather than later on the Agir. So the first thing we're going to look at is the armor scheme of the Agir. You can see that the Agir does have this massive 27mm nose. It has this massive 27mm ass. It only gets a 30mm deck, and it gets this 90mm of belt armor, which is super nice. We go ahead and strip off those layers. We're going to see that we do have a citadel that is exposed over the waterline, but we do have a bit of a turtleback. Now again, this is your typical German style of casemate armor and turtleback. This is going to do well against enemy cruisers, but again, the second you get those high penetrating guns, I'm looking at you, Stalingrad, I'm looking at you, Petropavlovsk, and I'm looking at you, every battleship ever in existence. The second you show broadside to this thing at any medium to long ranges, you will most likely get citadel. The only time I find the Agir's turtleback really coming into play is when you get in those tight situations and those brawling situations that either you have, I guess, chosen to put yourself in because of late game scenario, or if you're forced into those situations based upon what's being presented to you in the game or in the battle. That's when this turtleback is really going to allow you to get away. It's going to allow you to go around and turn to your broadside a little bit to showcase and shoot those torpedoes off, while most likely receiving an enemy salvo into your broadside. It's going to prevent, hopefully, those high damaging salvos against and citadel damage penetrations, and it's going to translate to hopefully being able to successfully deliver your torpedoes into the enemy ship, hopefully killing them off so you can move on to the next enemy target or get behind cover, right? That's when you're really going to get used to this turtleback. But every time else, if you're at medium or long ranges, you're most likely still going to get schwacked. It's kind of just built into this ship. And again, it's not too incredibly sloped and maybe at a 45-degree angle, so you're still going to reliably eat citadels if you're not careful to who you're showing your broadside to, okay? Going into survivability, 62,850 with a 37% torpedo belt reduction. This is actually pretty nice for a cruiser. Again, these heavier cruisers do and should have these higher torpedo belt protections, and that this one does. So it does allow some mitigation to take one or two enemy torpedoes if you do happen to, I guess, take one, right? It does allow a little bit of leeway. Again, a large HP pool, which is always super nice on a cruiser. Again, these are the 3x3 305mm guns. They're reloading with the build that I'm currently using around 17.6 seconds. I think the standard reload on these guns is a 20-second reload, which isn't too bad, but I do highly recommend taking in the 6th slot the main battery mod 3, as it's just gonna allow you to shoot your shells off faster. I really don't think it needs much more range. You already have 18.5 kilometer range, and really, if you're sitting and shooting, or at least trying to sit behind that and shoot from those ranges, I really don't think you're going to be too impactful with the way that this ship really wants to play. Again, one thing to highlight, you do have battle cruiser dispersion, and compared to it, this ship's sister ship, which is over in the research bureau, the Siegfried actually has cruiser dispersion, which again is super nice and is one of the main reasons why you should go ahead and get that ship. Again, that ship having the Gneisenau 300 or Bismarck 380 millimeter guns there on an Agir platform. This is only having the 305 millimeter guns, but you do have 9 of them, so theoretically translating to a higher percentage of chance or more likelihood chance of hitting and landing your shells on target compared to that of the Siegfried. Even with the cruiser-like dispersion that the Siegfried does have, I do find that the Agir is more consistent with its main battery than I do with the Siegfried. Again, that's just my opinion, and playing both these ships a whole hell of a lot, I just find the Agir a little bit more of a consistent ship. Moving to the high explosive, you're looking at 3600 HE as an alpha strike for your high explosive, your 27% chance to start a fires, and again, having that quarter penetration of 76 millimeters is always nice. Again, on the flip side, going to the armor piercing, you have 9100 maximum damage, and again, both the HE and the AP are clocking at 865 meters a second for your I guess leaving the barrels at a certain level of speed, right? Again, the penetration on these guns is actually fairly nice. If we go all the way out to around 18 kilometers, we're looking at 314 millimeters of penetration. And if we go where you want to be playing this ship, around those 14 to 16 kilometer range, you're looking at 361, which is super nice. That's more than enough penetration to get through cruisers, even some battle cruisers, heavy cruisers armored, and again, even some battleships if you're playing them right. Again, don't bank on the battleships too much. If you're getting with those ranges of sub 10 kilometers, for sure you have enough millimeters of penetration that you can go ahead and citadel enemy battleships. But again, we want to be careful when we're picking those close-in situations. We want to make sure that we've really isolated our targets and there's less enemies available to shoot us in return. Okay. Going into the torpedoes, again, you have the 2x4 533 millimeter launchers. They only go the 6 kilometers. These are typical German torpedoes doing 13,765 knots with a detectability range of 1.3, which is translating to a reaction time of 7.4 seconds for the enemy. And that's without the hydroacoustic search consumable up and running for them if they have it. Again, these torpedoes are nice. When you find yourself in these brawling-like situations, compared to like that of the Bremen has the 12-kilometer torpedoes, which are super nice in the way that ship wants to play. And regarding kiting and whatnot, this ship, I find the only reason you really need these torpedoes if you find yourself in those oh shit moments or those brawling like situations. And I like the faster 6 kilometer torpedoes for that compared to the Bremen's slower 12 kilometers, if that makes sense for you guys. Moving into the AA defense, and I do actually want to touch on the AA just a little bit. I do find the AA of the Agir to be actually pretty damn good, coming in at 369 continuous damage. And again, you have your medium range, your long range, and your short range. Your long range looking at 117 DPS, which is going 6 kilometers. Your medium range of 4 kilometers is doing 328, which that's really your big heavy hitter. And then your short range TPS at 2 kilometers is 101 with the build that I am using. And again, your flak can go to 5 to +1 to which equals up to 6, which is super nice. This ship can absolutely shred aircraft. And also one thing to keep in mind too is that you don't have access to the defensive A fire consumable, and your AA is still that good. Okay, I do want to mention that. Again, this AA is not going to prevent a strike by any means, especially when you're looking at tier 10 and or super carriers, but against tier 8 carriers, this thing theoretically can defend itself pretty damn reliably against enemy aircraft. So keep that in mind too. Maneuverability, and this is one thing I really want to touch on with the build that I'm running, and I'll go ahead and show my upgrades here in just a little bit. We are rocking 33.5 knots, which again is pretty damn good, with a turning circle radius of 880 meters and a rudder shift time of 6.7 seconds. The reason that those numbers are the way it is because I actually do recommend, just like you do on the Yoshino, and again, that's a review for a different day, I do recommend running the steering gears modification 1 in the 4th slot and the steering gears modification 2 in the 5th slot. I think this thing really excels when it can move and stay active within the battlefield. This is not a bow tanker like the Stalingrad. This is a very active maneuvering vessel that you want to play, trying to traverse that third turret when you want to and get that to bearing at times. The second you stand still, this 27 nose really becomes overmatchable, and you really want to prevent that as much as possible. Unlike the Stalingrad that has the 40 or 50 millimeter icebreaker, this ship does not get an icebreaker like I've already mentioned, right? the ship does not get an icebreaker. This is a 27 millimeter nose that is overmatchable by 406 millimeter guns or higher. And look at that. It can go straight shot right into your Arth ship, which is your Citadel, which is only 100 millimeters. So 127 millimeters of effective armor that it has to penetrate theoretically in order to get those Citadel ribbons. It's not too hard to do, guys, for 406 or higher. So again, the whole bow tanking mentality, you really need to understand the enemy battleship or enemy cruiser, depending you're fighting, to know when bow tanking is a viable tactic of mitigation compared to, you know, other battleships that like this really isn't going to do much other than hopefully playing the RNG game and hoping they get bad dispersion on their shells. Okay. And then going into the last topic here is the concealment. I believe base, and I want to double check this number. Yeah, base is 14.67 kilometers. And again, with the build I have, I take the commander skill, which again is going to translate to a 13.2 kilometers main detection, which is actually going to bode well for our Agir because we do take full advantage of the top grade gunner skill, which is going to play a crucial role in making sure that we can reload quicker if we do find ourselves into those brawling lake scenarios. And again, my commander is almost complete. The last two skills that I'm going to take here are the heavy AP shells and the gun feeder skill, so I can switch between HE and AP if I so choose, depending on the target. Now, again, the Agir really excels at shooting the armor piercing, so I actually found myself sticking with armor piercing. I would say pretty much like 90% of the time I'm shooting armor piercing because it just chunks so well, and I really can pinpoint my shells and where I want them to go that I can reliably chunk even battleship superstructure if I need to. Okay. I know another viable build that people take. Sometimes they take this outnumbered skill. Hey, I totally get it. If you want to put yourself in theoretical bad situations and utilize this skill, it's a viable build too if you want to do that. Again, I'm sure you would not take priority target. You'd probably take incoming fire alert and then gun feeder. That's a viable build. And again, and this build I'm using currently, I can see people taking pack up punch and then taking gun feeder as well because they want to buff their secondaries. To me, I don't think pack a punch is really that worth it. I'd rather spec something that I know I'm going to be using every 17.6 seconds with adrenaline rush that can really add some extra damage on top of that instead of leaving targets on like 100 or 200 HP when I can just finish them off right away, right? That's what I'm looking for with the build that I'm going to currently have. Again, I only have a 19-point commander. I don't have a 21, but that's what I'd recommend based upon what I've seen and how I've played this ship thus far, okay? But yeah, guys, basically that's the Agir in a nutshell. It's a really, really fun ship. I really do endorse this vessel. I really do like her. But let's go ahead and show you what you could do in battle, shall we? Alrighty, guys, and here we are in battle with our Tier 9 super cruiser slash battle cruiser, the Agir. One thing I do want to highlight, though, about the Agir in regards of getting footage to showcase you guys, this is just literally the first game I played in her of my, hey, I need to get footage to make a video, and I was like, fuck it, this really does highlight a lot of the strength and the weaknesses of the Agir. So I went ahead and just slapped this bad puppy or bad boy into the video, and I said, hopefully enjoy. Again, trying to solidify myself as a content creator that really doesn't pick and choose the videos that I want to showcase to you guys. I really just want to be that transparent, no bullshit content creator that brings you live takes and real reviews on ships. I don't want to just sit here and highlight, oh, look how sick this 300,000 damage battle was, and look at this E rank video, look at this E rank video. Like, I actually want to showcase you what makes these ships tick so that you guys can go out there and really achieve success in your in this case your Agir or in other ships that I feature on my channel. So again, I cannot recommend this ship enough for what it does and for what it brings. Its playstyle is super fun. And again, you get premium, you get, not premium, but you get improved credit income, which is going to be crucial to a lot of you free-to-play players, which again is something that's going to translate to you obtaining more credits so you can go ahead and buy more things. And I think that is always a big bonus. Tier 9 premium ships in the Armory for Coal are always big pluses in my opinion. I'll always recommend them more so than your tier 10s in the Armory for Gold just because you get that improved credit income and they're excellent crew trainers usually for certain lines and or certain ships. So that's my little take on that. But going back to the Agir, guys, you can see the first thing I'm going to do is I'm anticipating a push on this flank. So I'm going to go ahead and kite out. Now again, based upon what the Palo Emilio here spots for me, I can make adjustments and I can realize that I can probably go in and push a little bit more. So I'm going to go ahead and do so. Now, one thing I really want to highlight out to you guys is the consistency and accuracy of these guns. And I remember I mentioned that with the Siegfried. This thing only gets battle cruiser dispersion, not really cruiser dispersion. But I can go ahead and land what, 5 or 6 shells at 15 kilometers for Christopher. And again, Christopher is a very large destroyer, and you're going to see more salvos like that too as we move further on within this game. But one thing that the guns just feel so comfortable. It's one of the first things I noticed when I played the ship a long time ago, and here making this video for you guys now, is the guns actually do slap, and they feel very, very consistent. And I don't know if that was intended or if it just happens to be that way, but I really do like this. And I find myself really slapping a lot of ships with this ship, okay? Another thing about the Agir that I really do like, or how at least I try to play this ship, is I actually try to go to a flank and don't really want to be a lone wolf, but kind of try to separate myself from the main fleet, because usually ships, have to either make a choice, a conscious decision. They either have to angle towards the enemy vessels, like my teammates, or they have to angle to me. They usually can't angle to both. One thing that the ship really doesn't excel at is when cruisers, especially, and or battleships, are using island coverage to just isolate you. So it's a 1v1. This ship doesn't really do good on 1v1 when it just comes down to the guns and outside of secondary range. You really need to be smart about your positioning. I can't stress that enough. But that really doesn't apply to just the Agir. It applies to all ships that classify themselves as these like battle cruisers, super cruiser things. And here's another good salvo that we're able to hit the Christopher here. I mean, again, all 9 shells hit the Christopher. Okay, and that's at what, 11, 12 kilometers? Like, the guns feel so good, guys. And I hope you consider picking up this ship because of the consistency of the guns for a battle cruiser. It just feels so good, okay? Not to mention the tankier hull, and again, I want to put air quotes on tankier because, like I mentioned in my port analysis, it really depends on who your enemy is and where that tankiness can apply to. Now, obviously, we're going against a Riga here, so I know I can isolate him, and I have the torpedo advantage, so there's really no risk, at least in this situation. I go ahead and shoot a citadel. He shoots nowhere even near my ship, and I can actually go ahead and turn left, and I can get my torpedoes off here, and I can sink him without him even having the chance to shoot me in return, which again is awesome. So again, the ship is good when you isolate your targets and you're in those torpedo brawling ranges. If you're not in those torpedo brawling ranges, and let's say the Riga and I were just on a standoff at like 8 or 9 kilometers shooting at each other, I think the Riga would get the better trades. Now, that's that last salvo I wanted to highlight. When I talk about the wonkiness of the guns, even though I did just say it was more consistent, you will get salvos here or there, which I think people get too worked up in those salvos and they consider that to be like, oh, that's why the ship is bad, it's too inconsistent. But then you have a follow-up shot that you go ahead and land 7 of your 9 shells. You know what I mean? I think this ship is consistent. I don't want to label it inconsistent or inconsistent, sorry. But you should have, based upon balanced decisions in this game, because that is balanced, you will have wonky dispersion salvos every now and then. But then again, here we go, we land 5 shells. 2 of those penetrations of the 4 are Citadel ribbons, which is exactly what we want out of our Agir, guys. And it is something that you're going to see a lot when you play the ship. This ship really does benefit from a flanking scenario. As you're seeing here, the Mossful has to angle towards the other 3 or 2 ships. It's ahead of him. So again, I have his broadside, and again, which is exactly what the Agir wants to do against enemy cruisers. This ship was designed for one thing and one thing only, which is to absolutely slap and send enemy cruisers back to port. Which again, with a massive citadel like that of the Moskva, shouldn't be too hard to land your shells accordingly. And again, when we're dealing with the Lepanto here, who only has 380 millimeter guns, or 381, whatever it is, you really can angle your vessel where you can really mitigate the damage and prevent a lot of that incoming damage based upon the enemy shell caliber. Now again, if this was a 406, 419, 420, 430, 460, it's a little bit different scenario. Like, yes, I have a 30 millimeter deck, which is going to allow me to prevent some of that incoming damage, but you're still going to be susceptible to plunging fire. So one last thing I want to highlight about the Agir that I really kind of breezed over in regards of looking at the armor scheme of this ship is you have a 90 millimeter side upper belt armor. That 90 millimeters is a very, very nice threshold because if you angle your armor right, you will ricochet almost everything that is shot your way. I'm even talking like 510 millimeter guns. You can angle it, you can ricochet it if they land your upper belt. The problem is if you over angle and you're not sure on what the proper angle is, that will arm everything and you will eat full penetrations. And I think that's why people give this thing a bad rap regarding its like, oh, the ship isn't as good because they just don't angle and they're probably trying to shoot their third turret a lot and they don't time their turns right and they go ahead and eat massive amounts of damage. I'm not saying the build I have is the right build. I'm just saying it works well for me, and I think it's the right way to play the ship, in my opinion. If other people recommend various other builds, hey, by all means, you should go ahead and try them out too. If they recommend a concealment build to get it down to 11 point whatever, by all means, go ahead and do it. It's whatever they think. This thing for me, in regards of randoms, co-op, asymmetric battles, the only thing I really can't attest to is the competitive side of things. I have never played Agir in a ranked format, so for any people of you or any of you that have done that, go ahead and feel free to comment down below and let me know how that goes for you. I can only assume it's very matchmaker dependent, right? And especially with Los Andes and Valparaiso's running amok, I can only imagine how it's going for you guys. Again, it depends on the player too, and the map you draw in the scenario, right? And the players playing the enemy ships. But I digress. Moving into my final thoughts about the Agir. One, I recommend this ship, and I'm going to sit here until I get blue in the face. I'm going to argue that the ship is actually a good ship. I think it comes down to the map you draw, the teammates you have, and the scenarios of enemies that are spawning on the enemy team. This thing is very matchmaker dependent. I've noticed that. And again, it's because it's considered a heavier battle cruiser, super cruiser kind of thing. These ships are definitely reined in based upon that massive glaring weakness of taking 60-second fires and floods, right? That's what really balances these things. So when it comes to like an Agir versus a rune, especially if the rune's in the pre-kited position, I think the rune, if he's setting a lot of fires and the Agir's getting frustrated and then chunking with AP on his broadside, like I don't know, maybe the rune will win that if he plays it right. So it's an interesting thing, and I don't know how I feel about it. I do wish that these heavier cruisers and just cruisers in general that allow some kind of mitigation skill to mitigate floods and fires to some degree. Maybe not as much as battleships, but something might be nice because it's like all the skills they have are very offensive-minded skills. There's really no defensive-minded skills, so that's one of my critiques that I would have on the commander skills side of things rather than just the ship itself, right? Again, I would highly encourage you all to pick up this ship for coal, especially with the coupon that's going to get drastically reduced. I would highly encourage you also on the flip side of that to not buy this ship for doubloons. That is a waste. You can spend those doubloons on various other things that are going to give you more things and or a higher tiered vessel that it's going to be better, a little bit more rare, that kind of stuff. Do not spend your doubloons on tier 9 premiums in this game. There's no reason to, especially if the ship's already in the armory for coal. Coal should be the end all be all when it comes to these vessels. Don't go ahead and blow your doubloons on something because you want it here and now. It's like, oh, I don't want to wait up there, save up the coal. Like you will get coal accumulatively over the time playing the game. You will be fine. Definitely coal is the way to go on the Agir, guys, not the doubloons. Okay. Another thing is the guns. The guns feel super consistent. I like the way the guns feel. Again, you're going to have that wonky dispersion, one out of every whatever, how many salvos. It's going to happen. Don't get caught up too much in that one salvo dispersion value on the ship. The shells do land usually where you want them to go, and I do find these shells to be very consistent. Again, they are 305s. So what does that mean? That means you can overmatch those super light cruisers like the Smolensk, the Colbert, the Austin, if they're all nose in, right? You can overmatch those super lights. The Minotaur being a notorious one, right? I forgot to mention that, so I'm mentioning it now. And lastly, another positive of this ship is just all the hard-hitting armor piercing and the premium income of these ships. The AP just hits slaps so incredibly well that again, you really don't need to be shooting HE in this thing because the armor piercing feels so well. I call it the Petro, the Stalin effect. This thing really does have that for what it can bring with its armor piercing. So that's why I go ahead and took the heavy AP shells, which add an additional 5% AP damage, right? Some of the downsides of this thing is, well, at least one big one is it flood and fires. We already know that, but another big one is that the gun firing angles on that third turret. It's not very good. You really have to pick your spots when you use that third turret like I have here in this game. Really know who's aiming at you, and that's why I take the priority target skill, because I can see how many theoretical targets are shooting or aiming at me with their main battery guns, so I know when I can go ahead and pan out and flip out my third turret when I have to go back and receive that third turret and protect my belt armor or protect my citadel, right? Those are the big major things when it comes to the Agir. I know I probably should have mentioned that earlier, but hey, if you watch all the way to the final thoughts, then you know what I'm talking about with it. And I'll go ahead and flash up the gun firing angles here for you guys as well. Because yeah, the third turret is a bit of a struggle bus when it comes to those firing angles. And again, your torpedoes aren't actually terrible with the firing angles. You do have to expose a little bit of broadside, but again, depending if the ship is directly ahead of you and just how much you have to pan out just ever so slightly, it really shouldn't be that detrimental that it's affecting your playstyle if within 6 kilometers with this ship. Again, you want to pick your spots. You don't want to overcommit too early. You want to play a little bit more conservative in the beginning of the battle, and then go ahead as the game progresses, make those decisions to get closer and closer to the battle. And as the battle continues to develop and enemy ships continue to be eliminated, right, guys? So anyways, guys, that is the Agir in a nutshell. I will leave you on the post-battle screen like I always do. I want to thank you all for watching, and if I don't release another video here before Christmas, I want to wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and I will catch you all in the next one. Have a good one, stay safe, and peace out, guys.